we have the original window sticker. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, from 1999, sold at Drew Ford, Volkswagen, Hyundai, and Isuzu. If you really lean into it, it gets up and goes. I mean, I can hustle it around. It just doesn't act like it wants to. It really requires you pushing deep into the throttle. Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Daily Motor, and this is the newest addition to my personal vehicle fleet, a 1999 Ford F-350 Super Duty with the 7.3 liter Powerstroke diesel. In this video, we're going to take a look at the truck. I'm going to talk a little bit about my history with owning not one, not two, but three different Super Duties from this generation over this past year, kind of why we got this truck individually, and then we'll talk about a little bit how it drives and go from there. So for any of you who don't know, this is one of the most legendary motors that Ford has made recently. I mean, technically they didn't even make it, they kind of contracted it, but they helped produce it and put it into their trucks. It went into the F-250 and the F-350, and as well as the Econo lines of this generation, the E-250, 350, and what else? The Excursion, you could get the 7.3 liter in, and then some of the larger Super Duty trucks as well, probably 4 and 550s and everything like that. You can get them in ambulances or delivery vans, all sort of different uses. But this is an F-350, so it's a 1-ton truck, 3,500. This is a full crew cab Lariat spec inside, so top level for 1999, and the shorter bed option, the 6.9 foot bed. I don't know if it's 6 foot 9 inches or if it's 6.9, but something in there. That's the bed we're working with here. This one, as you're looking at it, despite it being so clean, actually has 329,000 miles. And when I purchased it, it had 327,000 miles and was a one-owner truck. Some gentleman, and yes, I know it was a gentleman because I looked up, I had the title with me. Someone owned this new from 1999, purchased it here in California, drove it for 327,000 miles. At some point in there, moved to Arizona, and then traded it in at a Ford dealership, where it went to auction and then ended up at a used car dealer called Morningstar Motors in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that's where we picked it up here. I believe, I'll have to double check here. I think it was Aaron was the name of the guy who hooked me up with the truck. And we'll talk about a little bit later, after I show you the truck, about why we were purchasing a Super Duty in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But let's keep looking at this. It continues to amaze me, not only how well taken care of it's been, but the premium accessories that were used on the truck. And that's one reason I was confident in buying such a high mileage truck, virtually sight unseen, is that you can tell by the way that the condition that it's in and the type of things that are on and in it, the accessories that were added, they're all very high quality things, and they're done well. So I knew that whoever owned it very likely took care of the truck, maintained it properly. And I mean, realistically, things don't get to be 300,000 miles like this without being well taken care of. So we've got this camper shell. It is a little dirty in here. I need to spend some time and actually clean this out, but since we moved to California, it's been a little bit of a whirlwind, and it's been a little bit low priority, especially while it's actually in the 90s right now. I'm standing here filming this. But it's got a bed liner, and everything seems to be in pretty decent shape. This topper seems to be in good shape as well. There's a small part of me that's tempted to turn this into a little bit of a camper rig. Obviously an 8-foot bed would be more ideal for that, but you could easily have some sort of mattress in here, or maybe like a single wide mattress and then some shelving kind of built up. You could do a lot of fun things with this. Oh, another thing, this doesn't open perfectly, but once you kind of yank on it, then you can see the previous owner installed a little tailgate damper right here, which is really cool. I mean, this is a heavy tailgate, so the fact that it lowers down smoothly, pretty thoughtful. As you can see here, we've got a backup camera. We'll check that out a little bit more on the inside. Some all-terrain tires. I don't really know this brand. Is anyone familiar with this? Pathfinder all-terrains. They're 265/75 R16s. Got a lot of tread left on them, but not the quietest tire in the world. And I would prefer something like an all-season, but it is what it is. Upgraded tail lights as well as the headlights. We'll go take a look at. It helps the truck look a little bit more modern. Upgraded and newer tow mirrors. So these actually pull out, so if you're towing, then you extend them. You can see a little bit better behind the truck, and we utilize that right away with this thing. But push them back in, they look good on here. And what else looks fantastic is these upgraded headlights. They're made to look identical to the 2004 and newer high-end headlights there on the Super Duties. I don't know or think that they're actual Ford OEM parts. I think they're probably an accessory, like an aftermarket that the previous owner put on here. But I think they look really good. And these also got some really bright, kind of whitish sort of headlights in there that are pretty darn bright at night. Overall, really good shape. I mean, it's tough to even find dings and scuffs on this. There are a little bit of just kind of things on the paint. I just washed it. Looks pretty good for being a 24-year-old truck. And again, see here we got a WeatherTech bug guard, and we'll start to see more of the premium accessories on the inside. In the back, probably wasn't used all that much. The leather is in great shape. I like having the tan interior here in this Lariat model. You can see we've got a little bit more of a white colored light there in the back. Interestingly, this bottom doesn't seem to flip up on these models. You'd think it would give you a little bit more underfloor space, but the seat back does flip down and gives you some storage back there, as well as access to a little bit of a jack in case you need to swap out onto your spare. Coming up in, we see the WeatherTech floor liners. Those are good. Solid and quiet in here. Flip down armrest, great shape. All the lights work. Sliding rear window, big thing. Plenty of room. No surprise there. And we can start to get a look at how nice the front is as well, except for the steering wheel. That's the only thing that's not in great shape up here. I guess the steering wheel and technically the driver's seat. It's hard to put 300-some thousand miles on a truck without wearing out the seat a little bit and wearing out the steering wheel. So those, if you wanted to really make the truck perfect, swap those two out. But more of the WeatherTech floor liner, some kind of silly little carbon fiber Super Duty kick plates there. I can't imagine these came factory from came stock from the factory either. So those look good. But before I actually get in, take a look at this underbody. I mean, there is no rust. This truck spent its entire life in California and Arizona, and it's cool, someone coming from Michigan his entire life, to see a truck like this that is just so gosh darn clean. Oh, you know what? I was wondering if this had a larger fuel tank. Look at that. There's a 46-gallon fuel tank in this truck. Holy cow. Date of manufacture, 2002. Somebody put this aftermarket fuel tank in here. Okay. Wow. All right, I'm gonna have to put that in my listing. So whoever drove this truck put some serious mileage on this. Nice. He was definitely towing a lot and didn't like stopping for fuel all that often. That explains it. I was a little bit confused. I did a highway fuel economy test on this 2 nights ago, and I was calculating the total range, and everything online said this should be a 29-gallon tank, but my distance to empty reader read something like 600 some miles, and I've noticed when I fill this truck all the way up, it takes forever, like 200 miles before the fuel gauge actually starts to kick in and starts going down. So that explains it. 42-gallon fuel tank in the short bed here. That's cool. The Lariat model back in 1999 got multi-way adjust seats, getting you extra comfortable there, but still manual for the recline and the lumbar, so not fully automatic. This is one of my favorite things about the truck, 6-seater configuration. Flip this up, and for part of our trip from Arizona here into California, Alyssa actually sat in the middle, and we were able to just sit here and sit nice together, and nice comfortable seat. I mean, back in the day, you'd have kids sit up here with you. I used to sit up in the front of my dad's truck when he had an F-150, and he had the middle bench seat as well. That was so much fun, but these day and age, you'd probably get in trouble for letting your kid just sit with only a lap belt in the front of the truck. But hey, I think I'd still do it. Just about everything else here works. The only thing that's a little tough, and I should give the previous owner a little benefit of the doubt because I think Alyssa may have broke this, but This is supposed to be like an ashtray, but it has trouble opening and closing properly, and I don't smoke anyway, so not a big deal. And then before we start the truck up and get the air conditioning rolling, I want to show you all this. This is one of my favorite things about the truck. We have the original window sticker. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, from 1999, sold at Drew Ford, Volkswagen, Hyundai, and Isuzu. I don't even know, where is this? La Mesa, California. We have a window sticker. Isn't that fun? Delicate thing. A little bit of tape, don't want to rip it. Delicate and dirty. 1999 Ford F-Series. SD F-350 4x2 crew cab Lariat 156-inch wheelbase, style side 7.3 Powerstroke turbo diesel, 4-speed automatic, Oxford white clear coat exterior, medium prairie tan interior. What options do we have on this truck that started at $27,000? Well, we have the preferred equipment package 618A for nearly $3,000, giving you the remote keyless entry, passenger side airbag, that's nice, air conditioning, thank goodness, the premium aluminum wheels, the leather 40/20/40 seats, 6-way power adjusted driver seat. So that must have been just the Lariat package right there. Then the 7.3 Powerstroke was a $4,600 option in the 1999. The 4-speed automatic transmission was $1,000. 3.73 axle ratio, $300. Engine block heater on here, California emission system, sliding rear window for $125, spare tire and wheel. Wow, they charged you for that, $300. Power trailer tow mirrors, $55. Premium AM FM cassette and CD player, $190. Aero headlamps. 4-wheel anti-lock brakes, $500. The heavy duty front suspension package, $200. Chrome step. Oh, so it did come with the chrome rear step bumper, $150. Trailer hitch receiver, privacy glass, trailer towing package for $190. All in for a grand total of $36,440 in 1999. I'll have to do a little adjusted for inflation up here on the screen and see what that would come out to compared to something like a diesel F-350 today. Okay, well, I am sweating, so let's start this thing up and go purchase some oil, because that is what you do when you own a Powerstroke. There it is. Good old analog tachometer, or not even tachometer, analog odometer and tripometer there. 329,125. Full tank of gas. Temperatures smooth. I don't know what that clunk was. Now that air is running, we can see our Pioneer head unit. Another one of those indications that the previous owner liked things nice and done properly. So I've got wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and even though cell phones weren't a big thing back in the 90s, this is a perfect cell phone spot right there. So you can put your cell phone, your wallet, plenty of storage all around here. So what led me to be the owner of a truck that I have no need to own? Well, a little bit of context. I have just always had a guilty pleasure for this generation Super Duty, the 1999 until 2006 generation Ford Super Duty trucks. I've just always thought they look good, especially the facelifted ones. I don't know what it is. I've just always thought they're cool. I've always had one in Grand Theft Auto driving around whatever they call them. I'm blanking on the name, but I've just always liked these trucks. Like I said, my dad had an F-150 back in the day in 2001, I want to say. And that truck was cool, but the F-150s were always a little soft on the styling for me. But I always liked the Callum-designed F-250 and F-350 here from this generation. So I've always thought it'd be cool to own one, but never really had a real reason to. Well, fast forward to about December of last year, and I had been wrapping up my Copart rebuild of a 2009 Ford Escape Hybrid. I picked it up off of Copart for dirt cheap, kind of just because I've always also had a guilty pleasure for green Escape hybrids, and repaired it and was ready to sell it and had it listed for a while. not really any takers. But then somebody offered me a trade for a 2003 Ford F-350 King Ranch with the 6-liter Powerstroke diesel. And it was awful. The exhaust was broken, the truck didn't run properly. I didn't know if it was transmission related or engine related. It was super rusty, the back was all beat up. In fact, I think it was beat up on just about every fender. It was a terrible truck. It drove, but then if you turned it, not even if you turned it off, it stalled on me once, one of the few times I drove it, and then I couldn't get it restarted because it wasn't building enough oil pressure. So you had to either spray ether into it to get it started or add enough oil for it to build enough oil pressure. So typical 6-liter Powerstroke issues. It was essentially terrible. Fast forward just a few months, I didn't really have that truck long. I liked it. I thought it was cool, especially the King Ranchness and everything. The interior was great, but the truck itself was woeful, and I really didn't have a need for an expensive, unreliable diesel truck around. I just needed an truck to have around because I enjoyed it and to use as a utility vehicle. So I got a trade offer for a 2003 F-250 with a 5.4 gasoline V8 motor, the Triton, the 2-valve Triton. And it was a more basic truck. It was an XLT Sport package, had kind of a cool sonic blue paint color. And it was also fairly rusty, but not as bad as the truck. Essentially what I was trading is a much better running truck that was cheaper than for a terrible running truck that was technically worth more, but only in good condition. So I ended up going through with the trade and kind of de-degened it a little bit, made it a little bit more presentable, and had that truck around Michigan as my spare vehicle, and it actually worked pretty darn well. I enjoyed driving it, I really did. In fact, I never even got around to fixing the radio that didn't work, because I kind of liked just hopping in and running my errands and cruising with the windows down. And technically the AC worked, but it was just a great cruiser truck. I really quite liked it, even though it was a short bed, extended cab. It was a cool truck. And then when it came time for us to move to California, it wasn't in great shape, that truck was. It needed some work to make it decently reliable. So I wasn't super confident in driving it across country, and I was like, well, there's really no need for me to have it out in California. So I ended up selling it. And then Alyssa and I packed everything into a trailer and into our Ford Maverick, our tiny truck, other end of the spectrum, and drove across country. Well, we're cruising along, everything going well. Maverick was doing a great job towing about 3,500 pounds, just about 500 below its rated tow rating. And then about 30 miles outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico, all of a sudden the Maverick stopped making boost and it fell on its face. Plugged in my scanner, it said under boost condition, turbo stopped working properly, essentially. We're like, oh no, here it was, middle of our second day, actually technically middle of our third day, driving across country, and our tow vehicle breaks. So we're like, crap. So we were able to limp it to outside of Albuquerque. It's technically Edgewood, New Mexico. Service advisor there was like, I mean, we'll scan it, we'll see what we can do, but we can't actually look at the truck until probably a week or two. And I was like, oh man, like we're not going to hang out here in Albuquerque for a week and a half. So, I mean, and that was just for them to diagnose it. Then, depending on what it is, they would need parts and everything. So, so we're looking through our options. It was Saturday, middle of the day, and we're like, well, we want to keep getting to California. We want to get there tomorrow. And we have this trailer that's enclosed that really we should be towing with something larger than the Maverick. We were kind of pushing the tow limit already with the Maverick, as evidenced by the wastegate going out. And so we were like, well, we need something large enough for us, our cats, our things, to get us all the way to California. So we hopped on Auto Trader and we're looking around at dealerships, a private party and everything, trying to figure out a vehicle to get. And up pops this 1999 F-350 with great photos. Morningstar did an awesome job listing it. And high mileage, but one owner truck. They had either the Carfax or an auto check or something like that on there. And I was like, oh my gosh, look at this. This is beautiful. So Alyssa was like, okay, if you really think so. And I was like, this really looks like a good truck, proper thing to do. I say we go for it. And I called them up, and it was nearing the end of business hours on Saturday, and I called Aaron up and I said, hey, we're interested in this truck, what's going on with it, is it available to pick up today? And he said, well, we've got it, but it's actually down with our mechanic, and it's getting a new AC compressor. The air conditioning doesn't work. And I was like, oh man, well, we're in a bind. So I was like, hey, is it possible if you just, wrap it up, put it together, can we get a discount from you? Like, we'll just, knock some off for the AC. And he said, yeah, okay, sure. You come by and take a look at it. So we went down, and they got it put together, and I essentially saw it, took it for a quick test drive, and said, all right, man, we'll take it. We need to get rolling here. And he was like, okay, great. So purchased it. He cut us a good deal. We ended up paying $11,200 out the door, and got back, swapped everything from our Maverick, left the Maverick at Edgewood Ford in Edgewood, and continued on the way here with the F-350. Now, as I was driving out to the dealer, I tried the air conditioning. I'm just like, well, let's just see what happens. And cold air started blowing out. And I was like, oh, wow, the AC works. And then it stopped. And I was like, that's strange. So I let it rest for a little bit and turned it on again. And it worked. And then it went out after a little while. And I was kind of trying it in different ways and different settings to see if I could figure out a pattern. Eventually, I figured out that the AC worked, but only on full blast, which ended up being just fine, because the next day we had to go from outside of Phoenix all the way into California, and it was so hot. It was 120 degrees on the vehicle's thermometer for a few hours at a time in some parts of the California desert, and the AC kept blowing. So we were totally fine, totally okay to have it full blast blowing at us. And this truck was an absolute beast. It had no problem. The temperature gauge literally stayed right where it is right there the whole time, pulling a trailer at 327,000 miles across the desert in 120 degrees. It was an absolute champ. So very proud of it. So we got back into California, got us here, and now it's essentially my garage ornament. But it's actually not a garage ornament, because it doesn't fit in my garage. This thing's 20 feet long. We've only got a 19-foot garage. So it's been living on the street. I just cleaned it up here today, but it gets kind of dirty sitting out there in the elements. And it's a bit of a shame, because I really do enjoy this truck, but because of the press vehicles and the motorcycles and Alyssa's car, I don't really have a ton of need for it. And back in Michigan, I was occasionally towing things and moving. We owned a house there, so we were doing more kind of dirt type stuff, and I had a lot of toys, so we were playing around. But out here in California, I'm not really doing as much of that, so I really don't have much reason for this truck. I think it's really cool. I enjoy having it, and I wish I got to do more with it. I've looked into things like campers that maybe Alyssa and I could get, or maybe even, like I said, turning this into a camper bed, or getting one of those campers that sits in the bed and kind of expands up on the top, and our various options there. But I don't know. There's probably other things I'd rather do with the money than just have a $12,000 truck chilling on the side of the road for most of the time. What it does need is oil. So I'm going to run in, grab a little bit of oil for the truck here, and then on our drive back home, we'll talk a little bit about what it's like driving a 7.3 Powerstroke, especially around the a little bit more electric vehicle oriented land here of Southern California, and then wrap it up. When I first got the truck, I stood for so long in the oil aisle trying to decide between T4, T5, and T6 Rotella. If the engine didn't leak oil, or not, it doesn't really even leak, it just burns. If it didn't burn so much oil, then I would do a full proper oil change with T6 and spend a little extra to have the best stuff in there. But if I'm going to be putting in a quart every 500 miles or so, then just use the T4 because it's going to cycle through so often anyway. So what is it like driving the 7.3 Powerstroke around? Well, and for some of you who are familiar with diesels, who you spend time driving diesels a lot and you're not new to the world, this isn't going to surprise you. You're going to go, yeah, of course. But in general, it's not as fun to drive as the gas engine. It might be partially because of the extra weight of this truck between the motor, the longer wheelbase, and the topper and everything. A little bit because of the steering as well, but this truck is a lot lazier feeling than my gas truck that I had, the 5.4 extended cab. So it's not as fun, really. Honestly, it's just, it feels a little bit more cumbersome to drive around, and I do think it could probably benefit from some addressing of the steering situation, whether it's the play that's in the steering or the heft of the steering. I've noticed that when I first start the truck up, it's very light and easy to steer, but then once it's warm, if I'm in like a parking situation or something, the steering can get really heavy. So maybe some of you will know what that's about. The brake fluid and the power steering fluid and everything, the levels are good, and the fluid seems pretty clean. So I don't know, probably power steering pump that it could stand to have. But between the loudness of the truck and, as weird as it is to say, the leather, the whole leather interior, like, it looks very nice and it feels nice, but it has more of a mature, button down, not as light-hearted feel to it as the cloth I had in my XLT before this. And I always thought that I wanted a lariat trim to kind of be nicer, and I like having the amenities and the thermometer and MPG and everything like that, but there's something about the simplicity of my XLT's interior that I actually kind of enjoyed having in a truck like this. So getting up to speed, I mean, the whole thing's just really got to make a racket just to get up and going here, and then you're driving along and just listening to it rumble away. I do think there's probably a degree of where I'm driving it as well. Where I was driving my 5.4, I was typically doing out more kind of country drives and casual drives, and driving around here, it's higher speed and a little bit more going on while you're driving. So it's probably part of the reason that I don't enjoy it quite as much. But if you're not doing a lot of towing, and again, this isn't rocket science, I'm not saying I'm surprised by this, I'm just reiterating, if you're not doing a lot of towing or heavy duty work, it doesn't make a whole ton of sense for you to have a diesel. I mean, unless you're going to tune it way up, get something that is very tunable and high power and torque, and you just like that sound and the smell and the experience, unless that really does it for you, a gasoline engine is probably going to better fit just kind of the driving a truck around unladen sort of experience. So a lot of people like to dog the 2-valve 5.4 for being fairly underpowered for a heavy-duty truck like this, but I really didn't mind it in my use, and I did a little bit of towing with that one as well, and it handled it just fine. So the 7.3 is loud and a little bit lazy. I mean, if you really lean into it, it gets up and goes. I mean, I can hustle it around. It just doesn't act like it wants to. It really requires you pushing deep into the throttle, and it's not the type of powertrain that encourages it. And then, of course, you get up to 55 and you gotta get right back onto the brakes to slow down for the next stoplight you come up to. So it's cool, it's endearing. I do admit that after it's been a few weeks since I've driven it, I come out and I drive, and it feels cool starting it up and listening to it. But there isn't anything really about having the 7.3 that I didn't also get a similar enjoyment to having with the 5.4. Realistically, this truck, as it sits, would make a fantastic tow rig for someone, even with 329,000 miles. The fact that you don't have to put DEF in there, that it's such a straightforward and easy enough engine to work on, and everything's so well documented. Yeah, you go through and you put in some new bearings, and you maybe freshen the transmission or something like that, and you're gonna have a truck that you could sit in here and put thousands of miles on, towing 10,000 pounds behind you, and it's gonna happily do it for so long with good maintenance. Even now, knowing that we've got a larger fuel tank in here. So it's been cool having, and I like it, and it's comforting knowing that I do have such a reliable engine underneath here, and anything that goes wrong, it's not going to be like the 6-liter Powerstroke that it could be a whole number of things that need to be addressed pretty much regularly. Now, this is going to be a lower maintenance diesel, but it's still not going to be as affordable to run as something like a 5.4 or even the 6.8 V10. I should point out that we did a highway fuel economy test with this and achieved 17 miles per gallon cruising at 70 miles per hour, but I have gotten a few miles per gallon better than that, going more like 65 or so on the highway. So the larger vehicle like this, especially the gearing of the truck, you're going to see big fuel economy benefits just trimming a few miles per gallon off. So again, you're going to see benefits for having a diesel for doing heavier, longer speed towing, because I'm sure you'd be under 10 miles per gallon if you were towing something like 8 or 10,000 pounds with the gas truck. But if you're cruising 65 towing with this, you could probably still expect to see 13, 14 miles per gallon, which will definitely add up if you're doing a lot of miles. Oh, I forgot to follow up on the air conditioning situation. So I told you that the AC only worked at max strength, but I'm not sweating here sitting on a 87 degree day filming right now. So what happened? It turns out, and this came from the very simple Google search, the clutch for the AC compressor sits right on top of the engine, super easy to get to, just behind the coolant bottle in the front. And there's a little shim washer in there, and that can get a little bit out of spec, just kind of where how everything sits in there. And the clutch will actually have trouble. There'll be too much air in there, an air gap, and it keeps the clutch from engaging. Well, if you simply take out one bolt, remove that washer, or sometimes there's 2 shim washers in there or anything, you just essentially take out one and then put everything back together, all of a sudden the air conditioning worked perfectly. So I was so thankful that not only did I not have to go through and put a new compressor in or anything like that, but the dealer didn't bother going through and doing that. Yeah, I was super happy to find out that my repair literally cost me nothing outside of a half hour of my time taking it apart and putting it back together. So that was pretty cool. But none of my feelings on driving the truck should take away from how impressive it is that this engine, I mean, I'm sure it's had regular maintenance, I'm sure it's had things go wrong with it, but I do have a fairly basic maintenance history of the truck, and I think it's an auto check, and it doesn't show any evidence of anything major being done to it, just kind of minor things. So the fact that we've got this truck that's certainly lived a life of a lot of towing and a lot of heavy duty use, holding up as well as it is and running so well here at 330,000 miles, I mean, that's really cool, you gotta admit. I do admit it is kind of funny having an electric vehicle and then a 7.3 Powerstroke in our garage. That's our 2-car garage right now. Alyssa's Chevy Bolt and my Powerstroke. So it's kind of fun. I mean, admittedly, this section of California that we're in, I mean, everyone loves to be like, oh, California is so liberal there, oh, there's smog, everything like that. Orange County is actually remarkably middle ground where we're at. So politically speaking, we're really actually fit in quite a bit more with this car than you'd think. I do love having a column shifter, that is for sure. I think more vehicles should have that. It's essentially a Mercedes, right? Mercedes or a Tesla column shifter. So there it is, my 7.3 Powerstroke F-350 Super Duty. I do admit, I love the way this truck looks. I do think I might take the topper off. If I end up keeping it, I'll probably take the topper off. I just think it'd look better. As functional as that is, I mean, unless we start using it for camping or something like that, I just like the look better without it. I don't like kind of the topper look. And on top of that, realistically, if I'm going to be using a truck, I'm probably going to be doing something like putting a motorcycle in the back or something. So it probably would behoove me to remove the top and have it just be a normal pickup. But yeah, there it is. If any of you are interested in buying it, hit me up, charlie@thedailymotor.com. Maybe we can work something out, but I'm not going to be giving it away. I do enjoy having it. It's a cool truck, and gosh, just again, coming from Michigan, having something so clean and in such good shape that's 24 years old, it's pretty darn cool. So thank you all so much for watching. If you do want to see more on the truck, check the link in the description. Got that fuel economy test and a no talking POV drive as well. And we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor, and as always, 7.3 on.